I've got a few questions that I get asked. Obviously, I put a lot of the projects together, but the technical of how to build it all is more to specialists like you. So one of the questions, of course, is how do I build soil carbon? What's the science behind that? And then what's the LawrieCo program that helps make that happen? So, yeah, first one is sort of what's the process? How does carbon actually get built in the soil?
So look, the bulk of the soil carbon is built from root exudates from living plants, Matt. So as plants photosynthesize, create carbohydrates, a large portion of that is pumped into the soil to feed the biology. That then goes through a whole lot of biochemical reactions and eventually becomes part of the humus pool within the soil. So this is the actual carbon that we want that's doing the work in the soil, that's holding our minerals and everything else. So that's majority of carbons going in through root exudates. There's some carbon which goes into the soil through the breakdown of organic material. That might be the roots of the dying plants, or it might be crop residue that's on the surface, which also breaks down. But the majority of it's through root exudates. And then the key is to keep pumping those carbon sources or those root exudates into the soil and building carbon. But the key is not to oxidise the carbon back out.
Right. So is that one of the things that over time the decline in carbon has been because of the increased use of nitrogen, etc., that's producing higher bacteria in the soil?
Synthetic fertilisers, fungicides, insecticides, all throwing that biological balance out, hyperstimulating some of the biology in the soil, which is then oxidising that carbon. So it's about finding balance, and it's about reducing that oxidisation. LawrieCo have put together 6 steps which sort of go through the whole cropping stage and enable you to complement and enhance synthetic and conventional fertilisers, as well as give you options of more sustainable biological fertilisers. And some minor changes in management techniques is enough to increase the root exudates that are getting pumped into the soil, as well as minimise that oxidisation that we're getting. So the overall gain is then you build soil carbon.
Yeah, and one of the other things I think it's important is, obviously you're dealing with a lot of large scale farmers all across Australia, and again, a lot of people think it's complicated to put this in. We're not telling people not to use conventional programs that they are. It's really about some additions and some slight modifications. Is that right? Is that what you recommend?
Absolutely. There's a lot of different levels of this. Someone who's a fully conventional farmer can just go out and start to buffer some of the toxic effects of some of those products. Putting a carbon source in with those sort of synthetic inputs goes a long way to sort of pushing this all in the right direction.
Yeah. And so is that really what you sit down to do? Is the best thing to sit down and do an end-to-end for our carbon building customers, working with our distributors to say, how do we put a 6-step program in, basically from sowing all the way through to post-harvest, and come up with a program that is the most efficient way of building carbon? Is that?
Absolutely, that's our key role. So we'll sit down with the farmers and we'll look at what equipment they've got and where they want to get to, how far they want to stick their toe into the water to begin with, and then tailor a program which suits their requirements, and then give them options to further turbocharge their carbon building capacity.
Yeah. And in this whole carbon sequestration, carbon building program, how quickly can it be built? Like, there's a lot of different discussions around what that is, and obviously, if you look at how we're under the current government methodology, we're actually measuring down to 1 metre. A lot of the conventional trials that have been done around Australia in measurement of carbon have been at sort of the 10 centimetre level. But how quickly do you think we can build carbon?
Well, it's actually, it can be quite rapid. So as I said earlier, it's all about, or predominantly about the root exudates going into the soil. So the better the growing conditions, the quicker you can build carbon. So higher rainfall areas with more sunshine are the optimum areas. But if you sort of take the run of the mill, we're working on about 0.1% per annum.
Yeah, that's if they're using a complete program.
That's right.
Need a program approach.
That's right. That's if they're putting quite a bit of effort into making some small changes and stabilising their system.
Yeah. And what about different soil types, Rod? You've talked about different rainfall. What about, if you've got sort of sandy soils and right through to heavy loam, clay loams, what's sort of the variability that you get between different soil types?
Typically, science supports the fact that you need higher clay content to store higher levels of organic carbon within the soil. We've got a number of case studies that we've done over the last 20 years with LawrieCo in very sandy soils, down around the Mount Gambier area and over in Western Australia, where it's near beach sand.
Yes.
With very good carbon building results, up to sort of 3.5% increase in organic carbon in what would be classified as white sand.
And is that because of the biology approach and buffering synthetics? Is that the key driver of that? What do you put that down to?
That's right. It's stimulating the biology. It's getting the minerals and things right so the plant can photosynthesize at its maximum capacity, and then it's also doing everything you can to reduce that oxidisation out of the soil.
So Rod, what it sounds like is that in this whole building, the technical side of building soil carbon, photosynthesis that we all learnt about at school is actually the key driver to it.
Oh, absolutely. Inadvertently, every farmer that's out there is building soil carbon, or producing soil carbon.
Yeah.
But what they're doing generally is then going and oxidising that out, whether that's with big hits of nitrogen or whether it's cultivation. There's a number of different ways to oxidise that carbon back out of the soil. So the key is to not oxidise it and to maximise the photosynthesis.
And I think some of the exciting initiatives that LawrieCo are also looking at is we're just going into trial work now on specific products that are photosynthesis enhancers, and we're really excited to check what happens over the next 12 months and beyond with using those products as another addition. I think there's some really exciting new technology coming into this whole space as a result of the carbon farming initiative.
Yeah, as you increase photosynthesis, you're increasing sugars within the plant, so you get a whole lot of other benefits. Not only are you pumping more carbohydrates into the soil and building soil carbon, you're also making that plant more resistant to disease and insect attack, and also more frost resistant. So you're getting all of the plant benefits as a farmer that you would want, as well as increasing your soil carbon build.
And getting paid for it.
And getting another income stream.
Wow.